Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Business Transition Roadmap. Today, I am so grateful to have Mark Richards with us. You, I think, are going to have the opportunity to learn so much from his story and some of the experience that he's had. He currently is the principal of Winged Keel Group, and he leads the Denver office here in Colorado. What they do is they offer creative wealth transfer strategies for legacy preservation, and it's pretty wonderful, the services that they provide. Mark has an incredible background. He not only is a business owner and has gone through a terrific merger with Winged Keel, but he also has just over 30 years of background and experience working with ultra high net worth people and business owners, helping them to navigate their future with regard to wealth transfer and also legacy preservation. So, Mark, I'd like to welcome you and just, again, appreciative that you're here. So can you tell us a little bit about you?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, unfortunately, it's actually 44 years now of experience. And
that's good.
That's just probably what happens when you're not employable. The career that I've ended up in has really evolved over the years, and it's been very exciting to be a part of that. And I think that the next decade, which I plan on participating in, is going to actually be the most exciting decade of what my career has been thus far. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this all the way through. And what I mean by that is when I started, it was with a firm by the name of Capital Analyst, and I didn't have an understanding of what I was doing. I had left New York and Wall Street, came out to Colorado, and worked through a employment agency to find a position. And this firm was in a nascent area known at the time as financial planning. In 1980, now that term is trite, but in 1980, that terminology was brand new. Nobody knew what that meant. And you know, it's one of those terms that's fungible, can mean different things. But it did mean buy-sell planning, continuity planning, estate planning, key person, benefit planning, broad-based qualified plans, and at the time, 1980, tax shelters. And so it really was a very holistic approach to planning. And it was working with small businesses of 20 million or more in revenue, which in 1980 were fairly large businesses. And then over the ensuing 44 years, that same theme really held true throughout what became the M.J. Richards Company, and then the Madison Group, and now Winged Keel. So there were three platform migrations that were all legacy evolutions, and those all stayed true to that original theme. However, over the course of that, the core competency from the very beginning was in the life insurance area, and now it's and has been for decades pure life insurance based planning. So Winged Keel is the largest independent agency that I'm aware of in the United States, focused on the ultra affluent as defined by mainly centimillionaires and billionaires, and the needs of that market and the business owners, which life insurance is really about cash for future delivery, and cash is oftentimes the missing component in a legacy plan.
Right. So your bio definitely has for over 30 years. So definitely need to update that. to go to 44. That's incredible.
Congratulations. The really incredible part is to plan on another decade, Elizabeth. That's the part that and to have that be the part that I'm most excited about. And that's really, that's probably pretty unique.
Oh, yeah. Well, and, it's slated to be the largest wealth transfer time in our world's history. And so it's pretty incredible to think about that. And through that, the life insurance and some of the work that you do is just crucial in that. Baby boomers getting a little bit older, business owners starting to transition at probably a higher rate out of their companies, and then doing the planning on, what does that legacy preservation look like? So when you think about, just for our listeners, when you think about legacy preservation, what does that mean so that they understand that?
Well, there's really there's two parts to every legacy. One is the human capital, the wisdom that gets transferred, and the other is the financial capital. We all know what that is. So, as advisors, our business is based on the transfer of the financial capital, but our sensitivity is very focused on the issues that tend to be the most important, and that is the human capital, preparing heirs, transferring values, having good communication and governance so that future generations have a strong sense of a connection to what came before and a shared mission for what the family is planning on doing in the going forward next generation or generations. So a successful wealth transfer and legacy plan is often referred to as one that perpetuates a family's common identity and perpetuates the family resources for 500 years. So talking about very, very long time frames in defining success. And most people have heard that expression of shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. What they may not be aware of is that every culture has a form of that expression. Italian culture is something stables to horse stables to horse stables, and the Dutch is clogs to clogs, and the Asian is rice paddies to rice paddies. And so the every generation has observed that the natural atrophy of a family wealth is 3 generations: the creation generation, the preservation generation, and the dissipation generation. And that cycle can be changed. And the reason, I believe, the reason that you would try to change that is because it is so devastating to be part of that generation that is the dissipation generation, the generation that you meet at a cocktail party and says, yeah, my family used to have wealth.
Yeah. Yeah, we used to have that. And just to to paint the picture, because I think our listeners know that I think in timelines, and the timeline, many people right now, business owners, wealth creators, some of them have active companies. Some of them have created wealth outside of their business as well. But some of them are, they say that 80% of a normal entrepreneur's wealth is held inside of their company typically. And so as businesses transition, if you kind of fast forward, if you have a business and you transition it, then potentially you've got a liquidity event, you have wealth, invest all of that. And in my mind, that's creating, in a way, a business that is a family business that then can continue on into the next generation. So even if you're in a business today and you're thinking about leaving, fast forward and start to think about what where does this wealth go? What do you want to do with it? And how is it going to benefit future generations if that's what you're choosing to do? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would add on to what you said, Elizabeth, that I think it is important to view business not in the traditional terms of being a manufacturing or service company that has, multi-generational family ownership, because more and more, especially with ultra low interest rates and the formation of all these private equity investors, there's been many long-standing multi-generational businesses which have gotten offers that are just too good to turn down. And they've seen it as a generational opportunity to monetize the business. So there has been a real in the monetization of businesses, leading to oftentimes, as you point out, these family office kind of configurations where families with large wealth can have a centralized place to manage some of the complexity, to coordinate among the different branches of the family, the shared planning, like the multi-generational trusts, and to hopefully start to think like a business, even though it may look and like a hedge fund or a private equity fund instead of the traditional operating business.
Right. And that's a shift in some people's thinking, because we do have that traditional vision. And so again, what do you do when you transition, and how does that work? And that's why I like the overarching thought of actually understanding what your next adventure really looks like, and what do you want to do with it, and how do your relationships fit into that, especially with the family side, right? So good. So, gosh, I am dying to ask you, actually. So you just recently went through the process of taking the firm that you had and merging it into a larger firm. And I'd like to just ask you, what are some of the highlights of that, if you'll share those? And then what about that really worked for you?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, it was very interesting for me because, I had been at the Madison Group, the former firm before the merger, proud of the fact that we were a 55-year-old firm. But one of the phenomenons that we were experiencing as a 55-year-old firm in the business of distributing life insurance was that we were delivering on average $50 million of death benefit a year for the last 7 years before the merger. And, seeing all that money going into families, sometimes in some years it was largely all one policy, others it would be several policies. Obviously, since 50 million was an average, some years were bigger, some were smaller. But what I recognized is that many of those benefits would have never gotten to the outcome they wanted and to the trust or whatever the ownership and beneficiary structure was, if it hadn't been for the Madison Group having been there all along the way and making the adjustments, because they sold the business, we were going to continue the insurance. They would call time and had to mitigate the premium payments, or they had to, they had a change in how they wanted to structure the insurance, and didn't like being in a fixed income type investment driver, whatever it was, or the trust changed, or the family configuration changed, or all of these things required oftentimes revisiting the original structure and solving for whatever was the need at the time. And if it hadn't been for that active conversation and knowing how to loop in the advisory team and get everybody on the same page and make sure that that there was a theme that that resonated with the client, a theme of what this was going to do, what purpose it was going to serve. Many of those benefits would have never been delivered. So as we got to where we, as I was the sole owner of the Madison Group after our first succession. Succession for me was being the sole owner of the M.J. Richards Company, then being a shareholder in the Madison Group, then being the sole owner of the Madison Group, and now being principal of the Winged Keel Group. And so I've seen, personally this succession, what I reckon, and I also had an advisory board, which we called the Wisdom Council. And the Wisdom Council met quarterly, and we reported to them. That was helpful for me because as a sole owner, I wanted accountability. And so by reporting to this very wise group of four on a quarterly basis, I was always nervous about those. And I wanted to make sure the information was in good shape and that it would be my chance to check on where we were, what our progress was. And in one of those meetings, they said, Mark, we would like you to come up with a plan B, succession plan, which was a succession plan. And it was going actually quite well, but their concern was that we could run out of time. And so I was fortunate to have a firm that we had worked with for 20 years, Winged Keel Group, in a joint venture basis in one of their specialty areas known as private placement life insurance, which was a very unique area of life insurance. And they were the undisputed experts in that area. So whenever we had that need for a client, we would team up with Winged Keel and joint venture on the work. So we'd had that experience of working together. We knew each other. We had built trust. We had built relationship. And so when they asked for the plan B, I knew who to go to, and I went right to them. And as fortune would have it, we sat down, and at that time, Winged Keel was already on a path towards expanding from their New York centered office into Boston and Richmond and Dallas and Houston and San Francisco. And so when we were having dinner, I said, have you ever thought that you need something in the middle of the country? And the principal, the managing partner said, absolutely, that's what I was hoping dinner would be about. So Denver, being an attractive market, made that pretty attractive to Winged Keel. And that I think will continue. I think the vision of the Winged Keel Group is to become the first independent, open architecture, national firm distributing life insurance and annuities to the ultra affluent, which is by the way a term I don't really like very much. It's a point across, but really the folks that we work with, I think the better way of saying it, although a little more wordy, is where families have assets in excess of their needs and wants.
Yeah, which is great. That's great. I like that definition a lot better. Yeah, because a lot of people, have that opportunity. So, and they wouldn't label themselves as ultra high net worth either, right? But they have that ability to have more than what their basic needs are.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's a great story. So just to share with our audience, as you traveled through all of the succession opportunities, right? Transition opportunities. If you look back, what might be one or two things that you look back and go, wow, that did not work very well, that you wouldn't want to do that again? Anything that pops to mind?
Yeah, I think both the Winged Keel Group and myself at the Madison Group, I would say having a partner that did not have the same vision, you were spending as much time with internal disputes as you were focusing on the firm, is something that I would really avoid at all. I would be very conscious of that and very careful, and would recommend anybody being about the partners you have, because it's just like, your friends. They're either lifting you up and making you better, or they are taking you down and distracting you from your most your better self and your most productive self. So I think that having the wrong partners is one of the huge risks, and that could be for a life partner in a marriage or for a business partner. And you probably deal with that a lot, Elizabeth, where that's one of the hang-ups in the succession planning is a partner who is contentious and doesn't have a shared vision and is an obstacle to what you see as a consultant as being what would be best for the business and the stakeholders.
Yeah, absolutely. And in our transition compass, we have the big six, the why, the who, the what, the when, the how, and the how much. Those are the big six questions that don't have to be answered in the beginning, but they do need to be or will be answered in the end at the time of transition. And I would, in my career, the one that people struggle most with is who. That's, who do we bring in? How do we know they're going to be a great successor? How do we know they're going to make it? How do we know that they're going to be the right one, that they're going to make it, that they're going to lead well, that, it's going to be good for them and good for the business? So the who is really interesting, and lots of heartache sometimes over that, especially if you have to include and exclude people. And the other one, the shared vision. We see this all the time where people will start a company together. They're both focused on the same thing. So we'll have a party of two, right? Two partners. They're focused on the same thing. They're building, growing. And even if they're the same age, they might be at a different place in life, have, different aged kids, or have different circumstances, of course, that go on. And what happens is what their one focus was, even if they were shared in the beginning, that vision and those values, at some point in time, sometimes they separate because they have different things that they want to do in their lives after the business. And that can be quite challenging as well. So who you're dealing with, I think, is so important. So thank you for sharing that.
And we, you mentioned the great transfer. Was driving a very large demographic bubble, right, of baby boomers. And that is, if you look at the macro picture, every organization I'm part of, every volunteer position, every affiliated firm that we work with, pretty much everybody is going through a transition at the same time because of that large demographic shift.
Yeah, very interesting observation on that. Yeah, the thing is it creates a lot of opportunity for people who are entrepreneurial or willing to take a risk. And it's hard to find those people. So, by the way, if you're listening and you're one of them, take a look and see if you can find a business or somebody that you might want to trust and go talk to, because there are definitely opportunities out there, and finding the who is really not the easiest thing to do. So,
yeah, on that, estate planning is often viewed as complex. We've done it for so long that it doesn't have the complexity to us anymore. But to the one who's entering in about all the different tax structures, it can be they get through all that. Where they get stuck is who's going to be the trustee. That becomes the most difficult decision in the transferring of wealth: is who do I trust enough make the family and with my wealth that will honor the intent that I had. And that, just as the name implies, is a very sacred fiduciary responsibility that oftentimes to identify. And you think about it, somebody who's been out there with big networks throughout a lifetime of achievement and has a difficult time identifying one person who they can trust to do the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And in many cases, I don't think in all cases, but in many cases, trustees are required, right, in order to create some of the tax opportunities that get passed on to the generations. Because without the trustee, that doesn't work. So,
you can't own it. And if you can't own it, then that means that usually an entity irrevocable trust, the owner, and that irrevocable trust is going to have a manager, which is a trustee. And so it can't be you, it can't be your spouse typically. You're going to have it be, and you probably don't want it to be one of the beneficiaries. So now you've taken the closest people and disqualified them, and now looking at institutions, and so it's just to your point. It's always a real challenge. But the more you can have strong relationships in your life, and the more you can have your story be known. So we do something called a family financial philosophy statement, where we capture the narrative of the individual and how that wealth was created. And that narrative, which is how we go into the world, right? With our identity is in a form of story. We all have our story. And if you capture that story, it's so much easier. In a multi-generational trust situation, there are going to be beneficiaries who never meet the grantor, the creator of that trust. So having that story documented is really helpful in both informing the trustee as to what the individual might want, and the beneficiaries of what the intent was, and connecting them to the source of the good fortune.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Great point. So we're just about at our time, Mark, and it goes so fast. This has been such a great conversation. And I always like to ask just kind of one final question and have one last little conversation about what one thing would you like to leave with our listeners about business transition or wealth transition that you think would be most beneficial to them?
I just finished reading David Brooks' book, How to Know a Person. And at one point in the book, he talks about his view on what makes a great marriage. And he says that a great marriage is one where both partners do for the other without any expectation of return for themselves. And I think that is also what makes a great partnership in business, whether you're true partners in shared ownership or just playing different roles in the business. And I think that as hard as that might be for some people, I think if you are doing what you feel is right and you're doing it for pure reasons, that you're going to have good outcomes. And maybe more importantly, you're going to preserve the integrity to ultimately successful, even if not in that current configuration.
Right. Wow. That's incredible. Yeah. So great reference to that book. And I think it's difficult at times to do things for others without any expectation of return. That can be a practice that probably most, if not all of us, can pay attention to and see if we can work that into our lives at an even higher level than we're already doing that. Because, I think wanting something for someone else instead of yourself in a business transition really helps to give a gift to them of allowing them to be themselves and to do what they need to be whole. And I think putting people first is so important.
Yeah, I think, George Washington set that example when he chose not to be a king and not to run for a second term. And that was a gift to our country and an example for all others to, learn from. And I think that with that kind of a legacy, we can. Didn't turn out too bad for George Washington, at least in a historic context.
That's right. Well, Mark, we're at our time, so thank you again for joining us today, and just some wonderful nuggets of knowledge that I hope our listeners will take to heart as they listen. And just appreciate you. So thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Same. Appreciate you, and have a good rest of the day.
I will. And if anybody wants to get in touch with Mark, his information is going to be following this podcast. He is a person that if you have questions and things like that, you can trust him to reach out, and he will definitely give you what he has with no expectation. So, thanks, Mark.
Bye, Elizabeth.
Take care.